Hi, everyone. My name is Sequoia. I am the Education Coordinator at New York Theater Workshop. Welcome to the 2050 Administrative Fellowship Info Session. This will be a time for you to learn more about the fellowship, and you can hear from our current fellows and alumni of the program. But before we get started, I would like for us to have a land acknowledgement. So I'm going to bring on the Community and Engagement Associate, Gavin.
Thank you so much, Sequoia. My name is Gavin Dai Trinidad. I use the pronouns they, he, or if you're speaking Filipino, siya. I want to share our land acknowledgement, which we collaboratively created with one of our company and residences, Safe Harbors NYC Indigenous Collective. As we gather for this meeting, let's take a moment to acknowledge the various traditional lands on which we gather today. We acknowledge that our theater, New York Theater Workshop, and our work is situated on the island of Manhattan, Menohanit, on the island, traditional lands of the Munsee Lenape, the Canarsie, the Unkachug, the Matinacok, the Shinnecock, the Regawonk, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We respect that many Indigenous people continue to live and work on this island and acknowledge their ongoing contributions to this area. So, with gratitude, we honor the land itself and the people who have stewarded the land throughout generations. Thank you. So now I'll pass it to Alex, the Director of Education and Community Engagement. Alex.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual info session. And as Sequoia said, this is an opportunity for us to share information about the application process for the fellowship, New York Theater Workshop, the goals of the fellowship, and for you to hear from some of our current fellows and alumni. Here's a slide of everybody that will be speaking to you at this info session. It will start with me, so bear with me. I will share a lot of information at the top and then bring in our alumni and current fellow in a panel conversation that I will moderate. And hopefully we have some time, we'll answer some of your questions, but at the end of the slideshow, you will find information about how to send us questions about any element of the fellowship application process. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Next slide. Okay, so the 2050 Administrative Fellowship takes its name from a Census Bureau projection that by the year 2050, there will be no single racial or ethnic majority in the United States. And so this provocation really has raised many goals at New York Theater Workshop, particularly around the ways that we can transform the American theater landscape, not in the future, but now, start doing that now. And so we're interested in working to evolve our field, particularly in terms of theater administration, the folks working behind the scenes to make decisions that will shape the future of the American theater. So we want to make sure that our field and the folks working within the field begin to show the beautiful diversity of our country. Next. So to that end, we're seeking candidates who are underrepresented in the field of theater administration. And we think of underrepresentation broadly in terms not only of race and color and ethnicity, but also gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, national origin, and physical ability, among other identity markers. And we'll talk about the ways in which we're asking folks to share the ways in which this fellowship could be transformative for them and provide access to them in the application process and throughout their career. Next. So as we've said before, we're committed to diversity in all areas of our work and on and off stage, and we're an equal opportunity employer. And so all qualified applicants will receive consideration that meet the goals and criteria for the fellowship. Next. So what are the components of the fellowship? And of course, this is information that already exists on our webpage. So it's a year-long paid part-time fellowship. We'll talk about the dates in a minute, when it starts, and what are the elements of participation within it. But what you get to do as part of the fellowship is work directly within a department with the team of that department. You will have an assigned supervisor from that department, but every fellow in the fellowship gets to work with everybody that works in that department, and they become an integral member of the department in which they work. At the beginning of the fellowship, everybody is required to attend a 2-day intensive orientation. Sometimes it has become a 3-day intensive orientation, but typically a 2 full-day intensive orientation. Throughout the fellowship, participants of the fellowship, our fellows, will take on day-to-day tasks and long-term projects. Both the tasks and the long-term projects are uh, determine in consultation with your supervisor the needs of the department and also your particular goals and skills. And together, both your supervisor and you create a fellowship plan to guide the scope and sequence of your fellowship. It's a document that continues to evolve based on your achievements within the fellowship, your tasks, and any changes to your goals throughout the fellowship as you progress through the entire year. Fellows participate in monthly seminar meetings, which are required. These are opportunities for the cohort of fellows to come together, to talk to each other, to learn from each other, and also to participate in specialized workshops, meetings with professionals in the field trips, and other specialized topics related to the field of theater administration and the creative industries. We also do more informal brown bag lunches with members of our team, invited guests, artists, and also participate in a number of industry networking opportunities and social events. It goes without saying that our fellows are also invited to all of our shows, to observe rehearsals, to attend readings when possible in our developmental workshop, and also to attend our gala and to attend opening nights as possible. So it is participation in the full life of the theater at New York Theater Workshop. Next. So we are looking for fellows in all of these positions in all of our departments. So we have positions within our artistic workshop, within our artistic department. The artistic workshop fellow works closely with our artistic team to line produce developmental readings and workshops throughout the entire year, as along with other tasks. Our development fellow works within our development department to help with all our fundraising efforts, from grant writing to special events, to donor cultivation. Our education and engagement fellow works within our education and community engagement department to work in our school programs, our after-school programs, our community engagement, workshops, events, and activities, both in community and related to our productions. Our executive fellow works directly in our executive department with our executive director and our artistic director and their team, and has an overview of the ways in which the institution is managed by leadership, participating in senior leadership meetings, and also a number of board meetings and committee meetings as well. Our finance and operations fellow works within our finance and operations department, and works in all of those finance elements, budgeting and payroll and tracking of finances, and also takes a participating role in the management of our facilities, our theater, our offices, our communal spaces, and all of those IT elements. So there's opportunities for all those areas depending on your interest. Our literary fellow works within our artistic department and our literary department, helping our team receive scripts, catalog scripts, read those scripts, do reports on all of those scripts, work with readers reading those scripts, and also help and assist within our artistic workshop activities as well. Along a bunch of other duties within the artistic department. And it goes without saying that our artistic workshop fellow and our literary fellow also participate in our artistic meetings with our artistic director and the full artistic team, and get to interact as well with our artistic fellows. The Artistic Fellowship Program is a sister program to our Administrative Fellowship, and it's a program that recruits directors, playwrights, solo performers, or folks that identify as any of those, many of those, and spend a year with us and receive mentorship and development of their work. So there's a lot of interaction with those fellows as well, and the projects that they are developing at the workshop throughout their fellowship. Our marketing fellow, goes without saying, works in our marketing team. And this is an area for folks that are interested in ticket sales, marketing efforts, digital content creation, digital social media, advertising, audience services, and community engagement, and publicity and press as well. So it's a broad fellowship as well. And folks that have interest in graphic design as well are welcome and encouraged to apply. Not only interest, but experience in those areas, also video content creation as well. Our producing fellowship works with our fellow works within our producing department. This is, I think, very unique to New York Theater Workshop. This is what, the theaters might be considered a general management office. But here in our producing team, not only do our producing team works with budgets and contracts and negotiations with unions and agents, but also works very closely on artistic producing elements, which means a lot of back and forth with artists, directors, playwrights, designers, as we're putting together a production. So folks that are interested in artistic producing, but at the same time, general management and budgeting and nonprofit management might be interested in the producing team. Production management works with everything that takes place in our productions and the things that happened in our theater to, in essence, produce the work that you see on our stages. It is an administrative fellowship, goes without saying. So while we'll have interaction with designers and stage managers and the teams putting together the production, you are working on the budgeting side of things, on the management side of things, to make sure that all of those departments, from lighting to sound to stage management to costumes, video projection, again, depending on the production, are taken care of and are progressing towards the implementation of our production. So folks that have interest in technical theater, folks that have interested in production management, folks that have interest in those technical areas of theater, even stage management, might be interested in this area. But it goes without saying, is a managerial position. So there's a lot of budgeting, there's a lot of reconciliation of expenses and overseeing of production meetings. So as I've said, these are all the areas. There's much more that goes within all of these positions. You can find longer job descriptions on our website, but I hope this gives you an idea of what would go into applying for any number of these positions. So we're in the virtual info session now. The deadline for application is March 27 by midnight. We will be reviewing applications between the deadline and all of April. And interviews will happen in April and May. You will hear from us directly if we're interested in moving you to the second round and inviting you to an interview. Offers after the interview process will happen in late May, and acceptance if you want to join us for the fellowship right after. The fellowship starts September 9th. The orientation is September 9th and 10th. And the conclusion of the fellowship is the following year in August of 2025. So you would spend the entire season with us. It goes without saying as well, and you might have read this on the webpage, that folks can apply to two options, to two fellowships, first choice and second choice. We know that folks are interested in multiple areas of theater, sometimes a more artistic area and a more managerial or administrative area, and you can apply to both. It's important, however, that when applying to both areas of interest, that in your statement, and we'll talk more about this, you highlight those two areas as well and the skills and interests that you bring for both areas. So it's an online application. It's a form that you can access through our website. And along that online form and attached to that online form, you should submit a single PDF with your personal statement, your resume or CV that lists any theater, administrative, or relevant experience. It's important to mention too that as you can tell, this fellowship has areas that might be considered non-theater related or that do not require particular expertise or training or education in the theater. So if you are somebody that is shifting careers, that is interested in less theatrical elements of administration, you can apply. Just connect your skills and your experience to the potential learning that you will make here, the needs and the tasks within the fellowship. But again, theatrical experience or theatrical training or a degree in theater is not a prerequisite for participation in the fellowship. Though it goes without saying that it's a highly competitive fellowship, and particularly in the artistic side of things, folks tend to have some experience or training or degree in theater. But a college degree is also not necessary. And then along on a separate piece of paper, even though we also collect this information on the online form, please give us the names and the contact information of your two professional references. But we have two areas where you can submit the information, the online form, and then you can also attach it to your resume, as is often the case in other applications. Again, we only need their full names and their contact information, preferably, of course, email and phone number. Next. In terms of professional references, your professional references should come from someone who knows you well in a professional or academic capacity. So not a friend of the family. And if it is a friend of the family, hopefully that friend of the family knows you in a professional or academic capacity. So we're really talking about specifically about a past or recent supervisor, a teacher, a mentor, or a collaborator. Next. In terms of your personal statement, we're asking you to answer 3 particular questions, as you see here. You don't need to answer them individually. You can write an essay where you integrate the answers to all of these questions. But in essence, we are asking you to talk about the way that your experiences and values align with the goals of the fellowship to diversify the field of theater administration, and what's the role that you play in that from personal experience and in terms of your career goals. What about New York Theater Workshops specifically appeals to you? And we recommend that you review our website, our production history, our goals, our values, our education and community engagement programs, and get a sense of what we do and how we do it to the best of your ability. There are no prerequisites to have visited our theater or seen any of our productions, because we understand that folks apply to this fellowship from all around the country. So the intention here is for you to get a sense of our work, our aesthetics, our values, and the kind of work that we produce, the kinds of artists that we support, and the kind of community that we foster, and make sure that we are a space that aligns with your interests, your aspirations, and that you would want to hang out in and with the folks that work at the workshop. And then really importantly, as I was saying before, specifically highlight the skills that you bring to each of the departments, each of the positions that you're applying for. This is really, really, really important in that both departments will provide consideration to your application. We mean this very seriously in terms of first and second choice. And just to say as well, there have been instances that we have even considered applications for other departments based on the review of that application, when we think this particular candidate might be a great fit for our producing team or might be a great fit for our marketing team. And so if that's the case, we would go back to you and say, hey, we reviewed your application, and we might not be interested in considering you for this or that fellowship, but we think you'd be great for this department. Would you consider interviewing? Would you be interested in interviewing for this particular position? And so that has happened before. Folks have gotten fellowships that way, and even become part of our staff on a full-time capacity after the fellowship that way. So you never know. So put all the effort you can into submitting a great application, regardless of the department that you're applying for. 750 words is the max for the full statement. Next. So as we said, the fellowship interviews will take place in late April, mid-May only. Just so you know, typically the interviews are not with a single person. There are with at least 2 individuals. I will attend all of the interviews and members of each department. Sometimes we might consider you for multiple departments at once. So don't be alarmed, don't be scared, but be well prepared to have a committee interview. Between 2 and 4 folks participating in an interview and chatting with you about the department, the work, your experiences, your interests, your goals. All of the interviews happen via Zoom, and they're typically, between 30 and 45 minutes. Next. The pay is $20 an hour, and folks participate in the fellowship between 27 and 30 hours a week. Our preference, of course, is that you participate a full 30 hours a week. Sometimes, as in any part-time job, things happen, you take other jobs or other opportunities, and you work less hours a week. But ideally, folks would be in the office for a substantive amount of time, up to 30 hours a week. The schedule is set in advance once you accept the fellowship. It's something that could be discussed during the fellowship interview as well. So just to give you an idea, some of our fellows work every day for a number of hours, up to 30 hours that week. Some of our fellows work 4 full days a week and are off 1 day. Just to give you an idea that the more you are at the workshop, the more you will take out of the experience and the learning time. This is both a job and an educational experience and an educational opportunity. So as you have seen from previous slides, your time is devoted to your on-the-job tasks, projects within the department, but also it is your job to participate actively within the cohort activities, within the educational activities. It is your job as well and part of your fellowship to take time to reflect, to learn, to grow with others. And so that is our focus, right? Time to do the work and time to reflect on the work and have other educational experiences. And as I said, the schedule is set in advance, and we don't do it week to week. So you would set your schedule in advance. If anything changes, you will communicate and set that schedule with your supervisor, right? Anything that goes below the required hours a week, we will have to have a consultation about whether or not you have time for the fellowship, but the fellowship is something that you can continue doing, as we want to have and host folks that can commit to the demands of the fellowship and the time invested in it. Next. So we are right at that point where I want to bring on 4 of our past and current fellows. Everybody will turn on their cameras, will literally take the slide off, and here they are. Oh my God, look at us. Okay, so we'll go around the proverbial screen and introduce yourselves. We have a current fellow and 3 past fellows and current full-time employees of New York Theater Workshop. No promises that you will get a job after your fellow, but pretty cool that folks that have left the fellowship either have transitioned right away into an open opportunity or have come back, which I think says a lot about our fellowship or training and the way we value our fellows. And once a member of our community, if you've done a good job, if you've done great work in their space, we really like to go back to our fellows and give opportunities when possible. So we'll go around the circle and introduce yourselves. We'll start with Una.
Hi, everyone. My name is Uno Servita, he, him pronouns. I was the 2019 to 2020 marketing fellow, and I am currently at the workshop doing digital media and communications.
Leo.
Hi everyone, Leo Angulo. I use he, him pronouns. I was also in the 2019-2020 Advent Fellowship cohort with Uno. I was the Artistic Workshop Fellow in 2019-2020, and I'm currently the Artistic Programs Manager at New York Theater Workshop.
Viviana.
Hi, I'm Viviana. I use she, her pronouns. I was the executive fellow last season, so 2022, 2023. And I'm now in the development department as a development associate for individual giving and special events. And I'm physically at the workshop right now, but somehow my Wi-Fi is faltering. So if I go away for 2 seconds, I apologize. I'll be right back.
And Nia, who's our current Education and Engagement Fellow.
Hi everyone, I'm Nia. I use she, her pronouns, and like Alex said, I am a current Education and Engagement Fellow at the workshop for this season.
Fantastic. And so actually, Nia, I will start with you since you're a current fellow and ask you to talk a little bit about what you do at the workshop and how your fellowship is going. And then I'll go and ask everybody else about what they did while they were a fellow and a little bit out of the transition out of the fellowship. But yeah, starting with you.
Yeah, I think my fellowship is going great. To just put that up front first, I really assist in like the planning and the execution of engagement and education events on a day-to-day basis. So I am really involved with the programs on the educational side, like Mind the Gap and Youth Artistic Instigators. And like Youth Artistic Instigators sometimes to me like feels like my baby because I really get to know the students so well and kind of just manage administrative tasks on that end. I also help like the education coordinator with like learning residencies with partner schools, and that's kind of what takes up my day to day. Also with engagement meetings and sitting on the engagement team and helping plan those events. I think my fellowship is going really good because it is kind of utilizing the skills that I already have because I have taught like I've been a teaching intern at other places before, so I have lesson planned, I have worked with students, and it's kind of like taking my skills and sharpening them and making them stronger. It's helping me become a really good employee and knowing like I can take the next step in finding a job. I can do these other things that I thought I wouldn't be able to do or I haven't done yet. So I think that it's really teaching me my skill set, what I'm really good at, things that I see that I can work on. I have the cushion and the safety to be able to do that. So I am very happy with how it is going and how I am growing as a person because of this fellowship.
Thank you, Nia. Uno, tell us about what you did as a fellow and that transition into your current capacity at the workshop.
Yeah. So like I said before, I was the marketing fellow in 2019, 2020. I actually transitioned out of the tech industry for the fellowship. So, if you're coming in with different experience that's not theater related, that's totally fine. What made me a competitive applicant was that I came in with Photoshop experience and graphic design under my belt. So um that is what I brought in as a fellow in 2019. And the marketing team really depended on that strength of mine to build social media assets, video content. Um, we had done that was the 40th anniversary of New York Theater Workshop when I was a fellow. So I had put together this huge project of doing what we called 40 stories for 40 years, which was a project of collecting interviews from 40 different people in the workshop community and compiling it into like a digestible type of weekly series that we did over the course of a couple months. So that was one thing. Another thing I did was help the education team build um, a trailer for this administrative fellowship. So there's a lot of experience you can bring in, but also in the marketing department, there's also audience services, which is like dealing with members and like memberships and front of house type of thing. And there's also data analytics if you're interested in that. So there's a lot of different routes within the marketing department that you'll get exposure to and also learn from if you're interested in, going any of those routes.
I remember you came in, Uno, with a lot of interest in graphic design. How did your skills grow throughout, and what are you doing now?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, I yeah, graphic design was like I think I just got a lot of practice being at the workshop, being able to like just practice it every day, which was super helpful. It was something that I came in, not to, I was okay, and then I learned a lot more like about Adobe products in general, like InDesign, Premiere, Photoshop, After Effects, all that stuff you touch working in the marketing department. Now in my role as digital media and communications coordinator, I do a lot of that on an expanded level. That also includes like how I strategize with our marketing team about press or advertising. It's all basically a continuation of what I was doing during the fellowship, and that fellowship really paid off to to what I'm doing now.
Great, thank you. Leo, I'm coming to you next. Tell us about your fellowship and your current work at the workshop.
Yeah, thank you. Totally. I was the artistic workshop fellow, like I said. And within the artistic department, at least during my time, there were three fellows. There was an artistic workshop, a literary fellow, and a casting fellow. We don't currently have a casting director per se on staff, so I think we've stopped doing that fellowship. But just to say, like, the three of us worked really closely together, but my main responsibility as the artistic workshop fellow was to sort of line produce the Mondays at 3 reading series. Mondays at 3 is a weekly one-day reading series that we have at that time we had every Monday at 3 p.m. Folks would arrive at 10 a.m., rehearse for a few hours, then at 3 p.m. They would invite some folks to just watch the staged reading. And so I sort of was onboarded to that, but quickly within a few months, I was sort of expected to like take that under my wing, as Nia was saying, it became my baby. And so I sort of kind of worked with my two other fellows in my department to help make sure that the readings were happening and, printing scripts, printing programs, making sure that folks are getting paid, supporting the artists on the day of, like really sort of true line producing of those reading series. I also sort of gave support to a lot of different other programs in the artistic department, mainly our summer residencies. We do 2 summer residencies at Dartmouth College and at Delphi University. One of my first big projects was to sort of company manage this out-of-state residency in New Hampshire at Dartmouth. Communicate with all the artists, figure out travel plan, help book travel plans, get folks paid, etc. And also a lot of sort of reading and scouting of work. They'd ask us to go out to see readings of other industry readings. I helped plan our yearly winter party that we sort of throw for our artistic community every year. And I also did a lot of work cultivating and engaging with, we have a network of sort of frequent collaborator artists called Usual Suspects. So I was helping draft the Suspect newsletter every month and sort of liaising with those folks a part of that group. But it very much was just like support for anything going on in the artistic department. I supported some of the budget sort of tracking and reconciliation process as a fellow. And I'm sure a whole bunch of other things that I'm not thinking of. And sort of when I came back in the fall of 21, I came back as the artistic coordinator, and a lot of my role, I think, as Una was saying, was very similar to what I was doing as a fellow, supporting the readings, really taking those on, doing also the 29-hour workshops, which is just a longer reading. And as I've sort of grown in this role to really take a handle and administer a couple of our artistic programs, mainly Alex mentioned the Sister Artistic Fellowship, the 2050 Artistic Fellowship. I now sort of oversee and administer that application process, which is a very long process. We start in September and we don't choose our fellows until March. So it's multi-step. We go from about 300 to 6. We have group interviews, individual interviews. It's a whole thing. So part of my work now is to sort of help move that along and also be a co-leader of the current artistic fellows. So we'll be, while we're obviously have the 6 fellows in residence, we also are looking for the new fellows. And so I help ideate and creative produce what the current artistic fellows want their sharing to be and help support their experience. And I now have, like, I think a larger handle on the artistic department budget where I'm sort of overseeing most of it at this point, with my boss kind of like supervising me in that. But as I've grown, I think just like my responsibilities have deepened is what I would say.
Viviana, from executive fellow to development associate, tell us.
Yeah, so I was the executive fellow, which is an entirely different department. There is a development fellow, so I did not expect to end up where I am now, but I'm very grateful. So what I did as the executive fellow, the executive fellowship is really lovely for anyone who is easily bored or really indecisive, because you're kind of all over the place and you collaborate with a lot of departments. It's a lot of administrative support, which is such a big term, and I hate when people don't specify. So it's a lot of what Leo was saying, a lot of note taking, a lot of going to meetings, a lot of little things that pop up that just someone in every department has to do, like reconciliation for the budget and for expenses. But it's just the nature of the department is such that a lot of little things pop up that don't fall to any department, and it's kind of a catch-all. Some things that happen with our relationship with the board of trustees, and some event planning for that or scheduling for that, supporting hospitality in some ways that might fall to artistic, but might be, for example, we need to send flowers on behalf of the workshop because someone who we work with got nominated for a Tony. I might have sent those flowers and written the note. So it's a lot of tiny tasks, and then the projects that pop up that are a little longer term, which both Uno and Leo referenced, change a little bit every year depending on what's needed. Because the nature of the executive department is that you're reacting to whatever's happening at the workshop and whatever's happening that season. And so it's hard to say exactly like what might pop up for you, but in my case, the nature of the kind of thing that popped up was planning a series of events for our board of trustees to go see each other's work on Broadway, like planning dinners with the artists, getting them tickets, etc. Another one, something really cool and with the kind of, just random thing that pops up is while I was here last season, we were working on Merrily We Roll Along, which famously has transferred to Broadway. When we knew that it was going to transfer, I had to do a lot of analyzing our contract and seeing how much revenue we would get depending on what theater it transferred to, depending on capacity, depending on how well it was selling, and doing like ticket projections of how much New York Theater Workshop would get. And so that was sort of a deep dive into contracts that I didn't expect to get. So there's a lot of little things that pop up. And the cool thing about the fellowship is that some of those things, like reconciling the credit cards and such, someone just has to do it. And some of those things you have a little bit of control of. Once you are the fellow, you work with your supervisor and express what kind of interests you have. And the executive fellowship is a great place for if you're not sure what the answer to that question is, because there's opportunity to collaborate with a lot of the departments. I can talk about those projects forever, but in terms of how I am now here, I left the executive fellowship with more event planning and kind of like relationship building skills that I built throughout than I would have expected going into that year. And I was it leaves you a little bit open. There were a few paths that I could take, and I was either going the executive assistant route because you work very closely with the executive assistant, or looking into then sort of specializing into a more into another department. And I worked with the development department a lot, and then a development associate position opened up at New York Theater Workshop. And so because it had to do specifically with individual giving, which is a lot of relationships with our donors, and special events and special event planning, which is part of what I enjoyed about the fellowship, I applied and came back to do that, which is really has been a great transition, especially because obviously I was familiar with the people, but it's like seeing the workshop in a completely different perspective and getting to know a different department, which is also fun. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so very much. We have a bunch of questions here. So we will answer some of those questions as time allows. And then I might have some questions to fill some of the gaps. We have a question here about the Artistic Workshop Fellowship. Leo, I think you can answer this. I had mentioned that it was line producing, and I think you answer half of this, but anything you can elaborate in terms of the ways in which the fellows would engage with the workshop process?
Yeah.
Does the line producer sit in on sessions?
Totally. I think that's a really great question. Line producing, it sort of has many it's like a lot of steps, and so there's a lot of like communication that goes into it. So a lot of it is like relationship building, in addition to like the logistics of like making sure that the room is set up the way it needs to be, that we have everything that we need, etc. But Amaya, who's our current artistic workshop fellow, has really like taken the Mondays at 3 under her wing, and she's the one that communicates to the generative artists. She leads the meetings that we have with them to sort of discuss the goals for the day. She's the one that emails the actors with the information about payment. And then she's the one that sort of welcomes folks into the space. A lot of the work that the Artistic Workshop Fellow does is like, I think as Bibiana was saying, is cultivate artistic relationships while also sort of being a line producer and doing the logistical things. And so, you welcome folks into the space and you help sort of set the space. And we do sort of alternate between the Artistic Workshop Fellow and the Literary Fellow, sitting in on the Mondays at 3 readings. And that's both so that they can observe artistic process from different generative artists, and also so that they can be supportive if something were to come up throughout the day that the generative artist might need. For the longer 29-hour readings, we've gone back and forth about how present folks get to sit in on the process, because, folks will rehearse Monday through Thursday, like 10 to 6. And so, it's not necessarily realistic that a fellow sort of sit in through that entire process, because there are other daily and weekly tasks that need to be done. But as there is interest, we've always talked about where's the opportunity for folks to sit in on those processes. And just to name that, we also do a yearly call for workshop proposal, where we solicit proposals for our summer residencies and for our Mondays at 3 reading series. And both the fellows, artistic and literary, are invited to be part of that sort of reading and curation process. So along with other members of the artistic team, we read through all these applications and then we give our opinions about whether something should have a reading or not. And so you could very much have a direct hand in curating something that would be for the following season. But that's sort of like the very beginning of the sort of line producing process of it all.
There's another question here. Somebody that is saying that they see a lot of overlap between artistic, literary, but they're also interested in producing. They're wondering if they can apply for 3 positions, and the answer is no, you can't apply for the position. But based on your experience about working as an artistic workshop fellow and a literary fellow, what is your recommendation? What is the difference between the two, and perhaps should they apply to producing if they have more of an interest in one element of artistic than the other?
Totally. Like I sort of have been speaking about what the Artistic Workshop Fellow does. So they're really they're learning creative producing, whereas the Literary Fellow is really supporting Aaron and Salma, who are Associate Artistic Director and Literary Manager, in the running of the literary department. So interfacing with the readers, helping track all of the invitations for all the readings that we get invited to, helping track the script reading process. But there is some sort of overlap. We try to be intentional about providing opportunities for both of these fellows. The Artistic Workshop Fellow is always reading scripts, and the Literary Fellow is always hands-on in the Mondays at 3 in the setup of the day. So they do get some of that experience. They also help me administer the application process for that artistic fellowship. So that's like a long 8-month process that they are my point on. And so like we work closely together in that process. So I think the main difference is, literary is very much like if you're on track or if you're curious about becoming a literary manager or running literary department, reading scripts, meeting with artists, whereas the Artistic Workshop Fellow is much more like producing on the ground, logistics, of course, still artistic and still reading, but a little bit more on the producerial side. And then the Producing Fellowship is supporting the producing department that mostly touches our main stage productions. And so that's an important distinction, that as an Artistic Workshop Fellow, you don't really get the opportunity to work on our big sort of season productions. And so I just want to make that clear. Often folks have some confusion. If you have interest in like, I want to work on contracts and I want to work on like helping support our full productions, then the producing department is where you'd want to apply, because you work with Evan, our producer, and our 2 associate producers, probably dealing with contracts and budgets and supporting the needs of our full like season productions, whereas Artistic Workshop Fellow supports our developmental side. I think the workshop is very special because we have a very robust developmental arm. So we do about 40 to 50 readings and workshops in a season that you'll be touching. And then whereas we do 4 or 5 season productions. So it's just a different like scope of work. Obviously, if you're working on the productions, you're much more in depth with one process, one group of artists over many, many weeks. Whereas Artistic Workshop, you're sort of meeting different artists every single week at a different phase of development. So I would say that those are the main differences. I personally did not apply to the Literary Fellowship. That was not my second choice, because when I was applying, I was like, I don't want to, and this isn't true of what it actually is, to be clear, but like I was like, I don't want to just be reading scripts the entire time. I want to be like doing things and being active. And so I did, I think, Artistic Workshop and Education and Engagement were my 2 choices. And so there's certain people, most people do apply for both Artistic Workshop and Literary. That's very common, but there are a lot of people that do Artistic Workshop and something else, either producing or executive is another popular pairing that we see in terms of what folks apply to. But those are, I think, the main differences between those 3, I would say.
Just to be transparent, artistic fellowships get the most number of applications. They tend to be the most competitive. So sometimes it's smart to apply to one artistic position and then perhaps another position in one of the other departments. But make sure that you honestly are interested in that area and that you are articulating that interest well in your statement. Going into a sort of a broader question, some folks are asking about are candidates usually able to live in New York City when they get this fellowship, or just from the pay provided by the fellowship? I would say not just from the pay provided by the fellowship, though we don't know your circumstances, but what did you all do in that regard? Yes, Vivian, I see your hand go up.
Yeah, I can jump in. That is going to be super different for everyone, depending on your background, depending on your circumstances, and depending on your willingness of like what you want your life and your work life balance to look like. Short answer is, I think all other circumstances aside, if you're just operating in a vacuum, looking at the pay for the fellowship, it is a very generous pay compared to many similar programs. And also, New York City is very expensive, and it's not enough to live a full life. That said, because it's 30 hours a week, there is a lot of flexibility to build your schedule around, and that's a conversation you have early. And obviously, you have to be ahead of like communicating with your supervisor, but the expectation is that you will be doing something else. And even people at the workshop will help you find what that other gig can be. If you want it to be at another theater, if you want it to be elsewhere, um, there's a lot of collaboration that happens there. I remember one of my favorite things about the second half of my fellowship is one of the other fellows who sat next to me right here, Jerome, the marketing fellow, was looking for a gig. And I, introduced him at the other place where I work front desk at a workout studio. And so we ended up working the same shift there, and we would literally work together there and walk over to the workshop. So the expectation is that there's a different gig, and people here will help you if you have thoughts on or are struggling to find one, especially if you're new to New York. And you can reach out to people for that. And on the expenses side, like guidance about like how to find apartments, what platforms to find, like sublets or whatever it is that you need. People will support you in terms of the whole moving experience if that's something that you need to do.
Yeah, I'll say that I moved to New York from out of state for this fellowship actually. So it was a big leap. But I think I also supplemented my fellowship pay with working as an usher at Ars Nova. And that was helpful. It's another route that you can take. Like, you work the 9 to 5 at the workshop, and then you have nights free. So that's why I decided to do ushering on the side, and that really helped. But yeah, I mean, the pay now for the fellowship is also higher than what it was during 2019, 2020, which is a great development. So every
It's higher than
situation,
it was last year.
it's true. It just keeps going up.
Yeah, I always feel like an old man being like, back in my day, we got paid X. But anyway, I also did front of house stuff to supplement the fellowship income like Uno, and I worked front of house at the public theater. So ushering, working the lobby there. And so like the way that you set up your schedule is dependent on what works for you, both for the needs of the department and for the needs of what you need to be doing to obviously sustain yourself. So if that's you only work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and you spend all, 8 hours of your Wednesday working at another job, and that's how you sort of get that supplemental income. The way that I did it is I was in the office Monday through Friday, and I think I just like got out an hour early and would just like go straight to my ushering shifts at the public, which is nearby the workshop. So that was simple enough. But like it's sort of what Bibiana's saying is like it does require a certain level of it impacts sort of your life, right? And it's like I was sometimes working 12-hour days, and like that was really exhausting. And so just being mindful of how to support yourself and being articulate to your team, your supervisor, about how we can support you, because we obviously want you to be successful not only in the fellowship and your duties, but also like in your life as a sort of growing administrator and a growing artist. And so we're all pretty responsive and flexible, I'd say. So we know, we're very aware that like the pay, like Bibiana's saying, for this type of opportunity is pretty good industry wise, and also it's not quite enough. So I think we all operate with that understanding, and like we all work to sort of be flexible around what your needs are to help balance that.
And I would say that most folks live with roommates.
Yes.
It's important in a place like New York City. Even people that have full-time positions live with roommates in New York City. It's just the nature of the beast. And I think there was a question here about folks pursuing their own artistic projects and their own artistic opportunities outside of the fellowship. And the answer is many of our fellows have done so. Of course, the question is, what kind of artistic opportunity, and can you balance it with your required hours? But it's always a conversation with your supervisor. Yes, Viviana, before I move to another question for Nia.
Yeah, and just to add to that, that also depends on the fellowship that you have, and being clear, not just with your supervisor about like what your goals are from the beginning, because people will support you as like a full person. Everyone here is a multi-hyphenate and doing many things at once. But also being aware, for example, I'm in the development department now. Like if you're the development fellow, like plan your opportunities and the other things you want to do around, like maybe the gala is not the best time to pursue a different opportunity. If you're the like education and engagement fellow, you might want to like be aware of the time when like youth artistic instigators is picking up. So it's different in terms of timeline for every fellowship as well. And um, just be considerate of that and communicate with your supervisor about like when the best time within the year it makes sense for you to either shift around your hours or explore something else. Just be mindful of that.
Thank you very much. Yes, plan accordingly in terms of the life of your department. So Nia, there's a question here that great for you, directly for you. Does education and engagement fellows spend the majority of the time teaching? Is time spent development curriculum, or is it something that the fellow would need to be prepared with? And then also in terms of engagement, is planning community events a large portion of the fellowship? Lots of questions into one.
Yeah. I would say that like my teaching and like intern teaching, like curriculum building background was definitely helpful, but a lot of my time really isn't spent teaching. I would say that it is spent a lot of time like upholding and making sure that like the gears still turn for the educational engagement programs that happen. So I do spend a lot of time like I do sit on like planning meetings, or I am answering emails for participants and kind of just like going through reminding them that they have rehearsal or reminding them to send their homework, sending a homework email. So it's a lot of the logistics behind what's happening. So I would say it's not a lot of time teaching, and I wouldn't necessarily be afraid on that end of being like, oh, I have to have something prepared already. It's like you get in the swing of it, and the education team and education engagement team is really good at kind of helping you get into the swing of those things. And for curriculum building, a lot of it is already set in stone. So you're kind of just like I said, maintaining and making sure those gears are still turning. And for engagement, a lot of time it depends on like when the show is happening. A lot of the engagement events kind of like fall in a calendar with the shows and what's happening in the main stage season. So I would say a lot of time is spent thinking and brainstorming, but like the execution, it comes in waves. Like I feel like sometimes the times are more busy than other times, and it depends on what's happening, where we are, if we're in previews, if the show is starting, if we're having like classes beforehand. So I would say it comes in waves, but it is a large portion of like we have engagement meetings, and that happens like bi-weekly. So you're always thinking about engagement. It's just how busy it is happens in waves.
Nia's also being modest because she writes our study guides and spends a lot of time writing that curriculum for each of the productions, and gets to teach the youth ensemble. And but I would also add too that we have a roster of teaching artists that develop curriculum and teach residency in the schools. And if you have an interest in assisting or teaching, you can take on those as well. It's just that our fellow has a hand on every element of the program administratively to make it to run, and assist our teaching artist faculty as well. But if you have an interest in youth development, in youth theater, we have an entire youth ensemble. And we meet with them, and Nia meets with them on a regular basis and has taught the ensemble. So there's opportunities for devising theater with young people, certainly our Mind the Gap program. So it depends on your interest in your area, but ultimately it's program development and implementation and management. Did anybody in the fellowship applied multiple times? I think you were all one shot.
I don't think any of us did. Although, it's not you can apply multiple times and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the needs, I'll speak specifically for my department, like change year to year for what we're looking for in the fellowship, in a fellow. So, just because you didn't get the fellowship last year doesn't mean you might not get a chance again this year. It's all about, supporting the needs of, what we might need in terms of like filling in the gaps of our strengths and weaknesses as a department, and how you can support there. So I don't think there's nothing stopping you from applying multiple times.
Yeah, and there's a question here about somebody that has applied or interviewed for the fellowship in the previous year, and if there's anything specific that you're looking for in the personal statement. And I think what we're really looking at specificity and growth, right? What have you been doing to further your career, to further your training, to further your experiences between the first application and the second? I think clarity and intentionality and goal setting are, the most important things in terms of what we're looking for. And that you have actively, worked on collaborating, connecting, learning, studying. So the more that you can speak about your experiences in the in between, the better. So clarity in terms of skills, clarity in terms of experiences, and clarity in terms of goals.
Yeah, I think just because I've helped review a lot, review and field a lot of these applications, and it's like just being like what Alex is saying, like you don't have to have a strong sense, but like it's helpful to know like I am Leo and I'm applying because like my goal is to be an artistic director of a theater. It's like, and so we see that and we sort of get to understand sort of where you're at and your trajectory and what you want to be accomplishing and learning. That is always much stronger than like I have an interest in theater and like I like it's really it pops when we hear someone articulate what it is they want to do and how they speak to how this fellowship opportunity will help them get closer to that. Because we're excited to meet folks that are going to enter with sort of an eagerness and an ability to like really help craft their fellowship experience and get out of it what they need to get out of it. Casey, you have a question about how much professional administrative experience you usually have. I was coming off of another administrative fellowship, to be honest. So I had a fellowship at another off-Broadway theater that I did for a full year, similar 40 hours a week in the artistic department. And then I applied for this fellowship. And Rachel, my boss, said, "Why do you want another fellowship?" And I had just sort of expressed how the workshop was a bigger and more robust organization than the other organization. And I still had a lot to learn. And like I was excited to apply what I had learned, right? So it varies depending on what the fellowship is, which department it is. But I think speaking frankly, like someone that has admin experience is a stronger applicant because there's a level of hitting the ground running that we can sort of ascertain from an application, where a fellowship where it's like you're sort of coming in from scratch. It's just a different sort of experience, and not to say that we haven't picked fellows that have less administrative experience, but as far as what we identify as what would be a competitive and successful person in the fellowship is someone that has like some sort of context for what we're doing, some sort of experience that they can apply and grow upon is what I would say.
Yeah, and I think another thing, and there's a question here about with so many applications being considered, what makes a competitive applicant for you? And on top of all of the things that everybody has said, I think an understanding of what New York Theater Workshop, some understanding of what New York Theater Workshop does in as a theater and the kind of work that we produce in the ecosystem of the American theater, right? If and just to highlight that, even if you haven't experienced that, having that understanding, you might be somebody that has done a lot of classical theater, has been interested in a lot of classical theater, but we don't do a lot of classical theater. And so to concentrate on that in your application, even if that has been your main experience, might not lead us to consider you as strongly as somebody that has said, I've done some classical theater, but I'm interested in learning more about this area of theater, or have limited experience in this area, and I want to grow in that area, and New York Theater Workshop does work in this area. That is much more interesting to us, for example. Other questions here, let me see. I think we've answered some of the differences between the literary fellowship and the artistic fellowship. Oh, there's a question here about the difference between producing and production management, and I addressed that, but just to say that producing works specifically with budgeting, contracting, agent negotiations of the productions as a whole, and production management works to take those budgets and implement them in the physical production. So everything that happens in the theater, within the fourth walls of the theater, is production management. So lighting, sound, scenic department, all of those things. So managing the process of through the design process, through the implementation, through loading and taking care of the production and load out in the simplest of ways, versus producing more administratively before we get to a production. Though there's a lot that happens within the producing team while we are in production. Uno, there's a question here about somebody that is interested in the marketing position. Can you talk about your day-to-day?
Yeah. All right. Well, if you're interested in the marketing position, like I said before, there's like three kind of subsections to the department. If you're interested in like graphic design or content creation, advertising, film editing, you work really closely with me. Other departments that we have are the front of house and audience services management team, and then data and analytics. But my day-to-day consists a lot of social media curation, advertising, strategy, sort of that thing, website maintaining, and uh, what else? All the physical, like all the programs and the posters that happen or that are that you come into contact with at the workshop is under my domain as well. So it's a lot to do with anything tactile or physical, or anything that you basically look at is what I work on day to day. So every day is different because we in the marketing department works with every department at the workshop. What you see online and social media is like a fraction of what I do in marketing. There's so much that happens internally that many don't see publicly. There's helping assist the artistic team build documents that they share with artists. You work with a development team to help create the graphics for the annual gala that we do every year, on top of all the other small fundraising events that they'll do. The education team, the Youth Artistic Instigators Program, and Mind the Gap and Casebook graphics all really come to me at some point. So my day to day, it's hard to say what I do in a day to day basis. It's like whatever the needs of the institution are at that very moment, whether it's also supporting the productions that happen on stage in our theater as well. It all happens to, come through the marketing team. So I will say, if you apply for the marketing fellowship, it's a fast-paced environment, so you will never, ever find yourself bored. There's a lot of variety and things to work on here.
Yes, indeed. There's a question about resumes and CVs, and I should mention that a CV or a resume is totally fine, but do not submit a resume or CV that only includes your artistic experience. As Leo was saying, it's an administrative fellowship, so highlighting any administrative experience or any job that has had an administrative component, whether it is working in a store or a restaurant or an internship during college. That's highly important. So not just an actor's resume or director's resume, but a more holistic resume. So it could be a CV that has multiple pages. That's totally fine.
I would also say,
Yes, go ahead, Leo.
also, like, yeah, definitely. We like just an actor resume, and it's like that doesn't give us enough information to really make informed decisions. So, it's great to supplement with that, so we have an understanding of what your sort of artistic life is, and also we really are looking for admin experience, and that can look like many different things. I know that when I was applying for this fellowship, I'm sure I still included some of my college theater stuff, right? Like, because I was on the board of a couple student organizations at college theater, and like spoke to in bullet points like this is what I did on an admin level. So, most folks are sort of early career, so like don't feel shy about including some educational stuff that you may have done in college, along with whatever work experience you have in the workforce, along with if you want to supplement and add your directing resume or acting resume. It doesn't hurt, but we always sort of like we're looking for more than just that.
Yeah, there's a question here about somebody that is early in their theater career and they're transitioning out of the field, but they're in their 40s, 50s. There is no age, maximum, and there is a minimum, which is, be out of high school. And so we're open to applicants across the age spectrum, as long as they meet some of the diversity goals, and age is certainly one of them. In the field, the workshop is known for supporting folks in mid-career. It so happens that given the demographics, and the folks that apply, the majority of the folks that apply tend to be folks that have been recent college graduates or out in the field for 2 to 3 years, trying to make their way. But there's no discrimination, and we certainly have had folks in their 30s and late 30s as well as part of the fellowship. So if you feel that you have a strong application and some great skills and fit the other goals of the fellowship, please apply. Uh, I'm not sure if this was answered. Is there a possibility of doing 2 fellowships at the same time? Oh, in terms of yes, we've had fellows that have done a fellowship at New York Theater Workshop and a fellowship at another institution or another program. The question is, can you meet the demands of both? And the thing to consider as part of our fellowship is that we're talking about an hourly a week of about 30 hours a week. So that is important. There was another question about whether we continue to offer a stipend. That stipend now, on top of the hourly pay, that stipend has now been folded into the hourly rate. So as we were saying before, the hourly rate has increased from last year to this year to 20 hours a week. Somebody here, I think we already discussed this. Can you include classes you took in college in the application if you haven't had any admin experience, but classes in business and producing and marketing and entertainment? Yes, absolutely. Please include those, talk about those.
I think I also want to sort of, it's not off of a question, but it's something that in my experience working with a lot of admin fellows and having been a fellow, that I always like to sort of be clear about and transparent about, is that like this is, as Alex has said, both an educational opportunity and a job. And like we often sometimes have folks that sort of come in expecting a certain thing, and like your department will rely on you for certain like weekly or monthly tasks, and you will be an integral and necessary part of the department. And so if you're thinking about questions about balancing with other work or other fellowships, like there is like, we say 27 to 30, but often like we're looking at 30 hours a week, and fellows are really busy with those 30 hours, right? Like we're a small but mighty organization, so we really rely on the fellows. And I think that that's a really great opportunity to learn. I personally was like, I appreciate that, like, I feel like I'm being treated as a member of the artistic staff and I'm being relied on for these things. But I just want to really frame that, like, it is really much, it's a job, it's an entry-level job, along with these educational opportunities, these additional things, these brown bag lunches, these fellowship seminars. So just to sort of name that, and that is, from my perspective, a really great way to learn, is like by doing. And so just thinking about what the balance is. And we often say, at least in my department, like we balance what an opportunity is versus what an expectation is. And we like to balance in having both. And like, where is there opportunity for you to dig into something you're more interested in? And where is it that like you're expected to be doing this on a monthly basis, because that's part of how the department like needs to function. So I just always like to sort of be clear about that like it is fellowship, and also it's like you're sort of an entry level employee of the workshop and are really pivotal to the work that each of these departments are doing.
Yeah.
Which I think is exciting to have that level of responsibility.
And we take it very seriously. We have a list on the website of the institutions and organizations that our graduates have gone to beyond New York Theater Workshop. So there's a long list of organizations in the creative industries, in the theater, in agencies, even in Hollywood. We have fellows that are artistic associate directors at other theaters and have had Broadway producing credits. In our fellowship, it's not that old. So we take that really seriously, the notion that it's both a job and an educational opportunity, and we're trying to prepare you as best as we can for the next gig that might come your way. There's an important question that I just realized here is at the top. Somebody that is saying, I'm a white female that works primarily in theater education, specifically in special needs theater education within schools and community. Would I qualify? And I want to repeat this and say that the fellowship is open for everybody to apply, and for you to let us know, what are the areas that you feel you meet in terms of the sort of diversity criteria. And just to say that we have had white folks in the fellowship, so it's not exclusively to BIPOC folks, but that we think of diversity broadly. We've had folks that identify as white, but have other markers that justify inclusion into the fellowship because they're frankly underrepresented. I would say that female identifying folks are underrepresented in the field in many different ways, certainly in the artistic side of things, including education, believe it or not. Apply. If you have any other questions, please, happy to talk to you about those. I think this is a question that is open to everybody. What did you want to learn going in, and how did you learn that? Assuming you did learn something throughout the fellowship that you wanted to learn going in.
I mean, I'll jump in just to stay on sort of on what we were talking about before, that I think it's a really great environment. There's a lot of specific tasks and a lot of specific skills. But one thing that the fellowship was wonderful to learn was sort of office and like industry, the lay of the land and etiquette about how to handle a job. It's entry level enough that it's a really open environment to ask questions. Now I'm full time here, and still like it's a place where I feel comfortable going to a supervisor and being like, hey, it's my first time having this kind of conversation. I'm actually not sure who to ask, or I'm not sure how to frame this, or who do I tell first? That kind of situation of just how to handle yourself in like a real professional environment that is in the theater industry in a really major way, because it's an off-Broadway theater that is really well known, is something that I was really looking to. I came into the fellowship directly out of undergrad, and so it was my first time being in a full-time office environment, and a lot of just the standards of like industry lingo, and sort of industry standards for like what expectations for to know how things work, but also just how to talk to certain professionals, and how people work with each other. I think it's something that I was really, really hoping to not have to learn trial by fire in an environment where I felt really, really scared to mess up. And I think this fellowship is perfect because you get to learn it in practice, but you do get to ask questions. And just to say, if you're the entry level at any other job, hopefully you feel the same way, and that should be the standard for non-fellowships as well. But I think that that's something that is really underrated in terms of something that should be valued as you're like an entry level person or transitioning in your career. If you're like new to the industry or new to nonprofit or new to just the structure of where you're working, it's a really great program to get to ask questions of each other, because you go in with a team, you go in with a cohort, and you can sort of do the like, do you know the answer to this? No, you don't either. Okay, let's ask my supervisor before you turn to someone who's your supervisor. So I would say that that's something that's really, really valuable.
To add on to that, just really briefly, I also came into this fellowship right after undergrad, and I just like wanted to learn a lot about education and theater and how they kind of coincide. I wasn't really too familiar with the operations of theaters before. I just was like the president of my student theater, so like I didn't have that experience of like what a working theater looks like as well. So I think that's what I wanted to learn and how I fall in with my love for education and engagement and that. And I think that's definitely something I'm like, oh, I know how this works, or I know how the lingo as well, like Viviana said. So that's something that helped me.
I think
Oh, go ahead, Leo.
I think, yeah, I think I'm slightly different in that, like, I had a few years after undergrad before I sort of started the fellowship. And like I said, it came straight from another artistic fellowship at the New Group, which is a smaller off-Broadway theater. But that fellowship that year was like my first sort of foray into like Bibiana was saying, learning the landscape of the industry, learning how to like the etiquette. So like I really appreciate the New Group fellowship for that. But then I also was like, I want to know if I actually enjoy this or have a facility for this. And so I knew that the workshop had a much more robust fellowship program, that they had a lot more artistic programs because the New Group is a staff of 12, the workshop is a staff of about 40. And so I went in wanting to like solidify my sort of place as an arts administrator and a producer. And then my experience in that fellowship sort of affirmed that. And that's why I'm still here, still sort of working at the workshop in the artistic department. But it was very much like, oh, I think I have a knack for this. I think I have an interest in this, but I really want to spend more time, as Bibiana is saying, continuing to learn in a safe environment and also take on more responsibility and do just get to like do more and hold more. And so my year I think was really fruitful in doing that and like showing me that I had the capability to lead certain things and I had an interest in it. So I think I learned that this is what I want to be doing. So which is like I think like the best case scenario. And sometimes people go through the fellowship and they're like, oh, this was great. And also like now I know that I don't want to work in arts admin in a nonprofit theater, which I think are both equally valuable things to learn. You know, I have a friend, one of Molly, who was in our fellowship class, is now going to law school. She's about to graduate. So, but I think she's working in entertainment law. So it's like, it's an interesting sort of path. There's not one right answer, but for me, I felt really affirmed in what I was hoping to get out of the fellowship.
Thank you so much. We have 5 more minutes and I want to answer some of the questions that we have remaining here. For folks that end up being asked to a second round interview, what do those next steps in the process look like? We will have a second round interview. As I've said before, if we want to consider you for another department, we might even invite you to a third interview. I would say that some folks in the artistic fellowships, particularly in literary, are asked to submit written samples where they are given a script to read and provide some comments on. And there's a structure that you follow. So you might be asked to read a script and to provide a report on that script for further consideration. But that's what it looks like. And then sit and wait because we are doing a lot of interviews and it's a long process. There's somebody that is asking if we have had older people in the fellowship. As I've said, we've had folks in their 30s, not a lot of older people. There's no age limit, and we certainly welcome for applications from older folks, older adults. It just turns out that we get not that many applications from older folks. So who knows, if you're an older folk and you want to apply, you feel like you have a strong application, please do. You know, you might end up in our fellowship. And we mean that very seriously. One of our programs at New York Theater Workshop, it's an intergenerational program called Mind the Gap. And we work all the time with older adults as part of that program. So very open in that regard. Not many folks apply. So please consider, there's no reason why you wouldn't be considered for the opportunity. And we have conducted interviews with older folks in the past that have applied. For one reason or another, they have not received the fellowship, but please do. Let's see. This is being recorded and we will upload it to our YouTube page if you joined us late. Any challenges that you experience as part of the fellowship?
I mean,
Unexpected challenges?
COVID-19.
That is true for some. Yeah, that's right. But we were
Uno and
able to keep you employed
yeah, Uno and I
at
were
the
part
end
of
of their fellowship.
part of the
Remotely,
fellowship
though.
class that went from 2019 to 2020. So halfway through the fellowship, the COVID-19 pandemic sort of started, and we all shifted to sort of virtual, and like we were part of that. Like there's a version where the workshop was like, okay, we need to figure out how we're cutting costs, and so your fellowship's over, but they didn't do that, which I appreciate. And I think we all became engaged in what does it mean to sort of run a theater virtually as we figure out what this global situation is. So we pivoted to virtual programming. I played a big part in like Zoom master classes, all this stuff. I helped sort of commission a small little like Zoom theater festival with our artistic fellows. So, you know, it was rough having the last few months be on Zoom, but like I think that the team really pivoted to make it sort of still as meaningful as possible given the givens. That's our big challenge.
I'll also say that a personal challenge for me was like getting everything I wanted to do in the fellowship or out of the fellowship in 30 hours. Um, you know, that's the cap, but 30 hours is like yeah, it was just I don't know what to say more than that, but it was a great experience in like prioritizing projects and trying to like self-manage what you know what the team needed out of me the most, and that has certainly I wouldn't have ever guessed during the fellowship, but that has helped tremendously, like just my like self-organization now as a full-time staff, tremendously.
Um, Thank you all so much. We are out of time. But really, just wanted to say, there's an important question here in terms of in-person, virtual, or hybrid, and to say that we are back in person in the office. Our business is in person at New York Theater Workshop, though folks, however, can work remotely 1 to 2 days a week, and in fact do. That's a conversation to have with your supervisor as you're setting up your schedule. Thank you for that question. We almost forgot about that, but a completely remote fellowship is not the way we go about it. So you have to be in the office at least 3 days a week. Happy to answer further questions through our fellowship email. You can find all of that information on our website. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you to Uno, Viviana, Nia, and Leo. And thank you to all of you for hanging out. We are hoping to read your application. Sorry, we ran out of time. I know there's a bunch more other questions, but again, direct those to us via email and we'd be happy to review them. Thank you all. We're looking forward to reviewing your applications. Have a great evening.